Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TVA Lunch and Learn hosted by the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council. We're going to give folks just a minute or two to populate the Zoom and then we will get started. So, everyone, hang tight and we will get started shortly. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time zone that you are in. Thank you all for joining us for the TVA Lunch and Learn hosted by the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council. We are so pleased to have you all with us today. Just a couple of programming notes and reminders before we get started. If you would like to ask a question, we will have time for Q&A at the end. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it immediately, click on that little more icon and you'll see it in there. Type in your question and I will moderate a question and answer session at the end of this. So thank you all for coming. We are pleased to have you. The Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council is the state's champion for the advanced energy industry, and we are pleased to bring you these wonderful individuals and executives from TVA so we can hear more about TVA's priorities as our state and the valley is experiencing tremendous growth. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council President, Dr. Robert Hardin. He is also the Senior Quality Manager at Vocker. So Robert, please take it away.
Thanks, Courtney. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to have everyone here today. It's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Heidi Smith, the Vice President of Economic Development here at the TVA. In her role, Heidi leads TVA's efforts to foster job creation and attract investment across the seven-state Tennessee Valley region, advancing TVA's mission of service through economic growth. Since joining TVA in 2002, Heidi's been instrumental in developing and implementing strategic recruitment, community development programs, site development initiatives, and workforce development strategies that help prepare and position communities to be in a more marketable situation for economic growth opportunities. Heidi's been recognized for her contributions with the Tennessee Economic Development Council's Fred H. Harris Professional of the Year Award, and has been inducted into the Southern Business and Development's Southern Economic Development Hall of Fame. We're grateful to have Heidi with us today to share her insights and expertise around supporting growth in the Tennessee Valley. Please join me in welcoming Heidi. Heidi, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Robert. Thank you for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today. As Robert mentioned, I've been with TVA for 24 years, and I've had the unique privilege of being in the economic development team. So it's just my pleasure to speak with you today. I'm going to roll through some slides and talk about how we support our communities and our states and our local power companies in creating jobs and investment for the Valley. So with that, one of my favorite quotes is from Franklin D. Roosevelt, where he mentioned that it's TVA's mission to improve the standard of living for the people that we serve. So we do that every day at TVA, but we also do that within our economic development work and programs and services. So TVA, we like to call it our 3 E's, and this is where we deliver on our mission for the people. We make sure that we are delivering affordable, reliable power. We are stewards to the valley natural resources, the river system. And then the group that I have the privilege to lead is Partnering for Economic Growth. And that's where we meet our communities, our state partners, where they are to achieve that capital investment and job creation goal. When you look across our services and how we engage with our communities and our economic development strategies, we really bucket our work in three primary functions. We prepare communities for growth, and that's different for every community that we serve. So we reach in, we talk to our communities, we understand what they're trying to achieve. So we have a variety of programs and services. We recruit new companies and investment across our service region, the Tennessee Valley. And we've had a unique position in that for years, and we'll continue to do that. And then we retain our industries through our existing industry programs. We want to keep our existing industries healthy and competitive and viable. And then we also want to retain talent, that workforce that are going to work now and in the future across our service region. How we support communities, I've got a kind of a variety of things. I did want to mention this in the picture is Little Leaf Farms. That is a project that announced this last year, and it is a hydroponic lettuce maker. And so if any of you want to know more about lettuce, I learned a lot about lettuce in the process of working with this company, but we're really proud of that announcement in Coffee County, Tennessee. So going back to our list on the left of how we support, so we have site development programs where we can help a community envision how they want to grow their industrial site inventory. We have a technical and design service group, and we call them our little mini engineering firm. They can do site layouts, renderings, really trying to capture what is the company trying to locate, how they're going to fit on a site, can they envision how that's going to work. So we do that day in and day out. We also help communities think about the future with master plans. We also offer research. We have a market analyst that does a variety of research projects for our communities. A lot of times we get asked to answer the questions, how might they, what could be possible? So we tap into a lot of databases and offer that research. We offer incentives for our program. They're all performance-based, so companies invest and employ in our region, and so we invest with them. We have a training and development program, so we are out in our communities day in and day out, helping our communities solve problems, what training, and it's a variety of training programs. A lot of it these days is very customized on what a community is trying to achieve. I mentioned earlier that we do recruit industry across our region, and then we partner with the TVA corporate communication group to market and tell the good story about our region and the work that we're doing at TVA and with our partners. One of the programs I wanted to pull out that was instrumental in getting us the mindset for preparing to growth was the TVA Certified Mega Site program. We launched the program in January of 2004, and we sold the first site in Mississippi in 2005. So we had immediate success. And our role was working through a consultant to help communities understand how to recruit larger industries across the footprint. We originally built the program to recruit into the automotive assembly, which we call an OEM, across our region, but we found great success in other industries that were interested. So this program gave communities the roadmap to follow, how to approach and work with automotive companies and others, as you can see across the screen, that were interested in making sizable investments and creating jobs across the region. Our growth history and our impact over the years, and I've got numbers here from fiscal year 16 through 26, we've had sizable impact with our jobs created, our jobs retained, our capital investment. I've got some logos on the screen so you all can get an idea of what type of industries have been making announcements across our region. This certainly doesn't represent everybody, but it's some notable announced projects. And the industries that we have activity are headquarters, aerospace and defense, energy systems, consumer and industrial products, automotive, life science, food and beverage, and then distribution and logistics. The beauty of our region is that we have such a diverse footprint that we have something for everybody in terms of a company making a location decision. So we're really proud of our region and the attributes that we have. And then these companies make our region even stronger. The work that we do, so we do not do this work alone. We do this work in partnership. If you talk to anybody in economic development, they're going to use the word teamwork. So we partner with our local power companies. We have regional partners, economic development agencies. We partner with our federal partners. Certainly our state agencies across our footprint are highly engaged in what we do. And then our local economic development agencies. We work day in and day out to be providing solutions, being a partner, and filling into where we can so we can help the community achieve their goals and creating jobs and investment. So closing out, I know we're going to take some questions for me at the end, but thank you for having me today. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. Next up, as the region grows and the utility industry changes, TVA remains committed to its mission of serving the people of the Tennessee Valley. TVA's interim president and CEO, Mike Skaggs, will share how TVA is delivering on that mission today while planning for the future, including building new generation and transmission capacity and exploring innovative partnerships to benefit the region and the nation. Now, most of you know Mike Skaggs, and he needs little introduction, but for those of you who are not familiar with Mike's impressive background, he has more than 40 years of experience in the utility industry, including more than 25 years at TVA, and he returned from retirement in April 2026 to serve in this leadership role. Prior to his retirement in 2022, Mike served in a variety of leadership positions at TVA, including Chief Operations Officer, where he oversaw key areas of the business, including power generation, transmission, environmental stewardship, supply chain, major projects, and emergency management. Throughout his career, he's been recognized for his focus on operational excellence, safety, and performance improvement. So with that, Mike Skaggs, Interim President and Chief Executive Officer of the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Thank you much. Thank you for the introduction. Very kind of you. Thanks, Heidi, and your discussion that you gave us. Heidi does a great job, and we're very proud of the work that she brings to TVA and how she's carrying out our mission. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our employees and delivering on the mission to continue the theme that Heidi started. So it's an exciting time at TVA. You know, our operational performance and financial performance is going quite well. I'm very proud of our employees, but we do have a hot summer in front of us, and we didn't have a lot of rain, and so we're dealing with that challenge as we go through. So as you look up and see it rain a little bit, be thankful for TVA and for your electricity. A little bit of some of the updates that are going on with respect to TVA. We're continuing to grow generation and transmission capacity. We have 3,700 megawatts under construction. The Cumberland Combined Cycle Plant, which has 1,450 megawatts electric, that is in its final stages of completion. We have fired that plant and it runs well. And we're continuing to complete things that need to be done for the commissioning of that plant later this year. The Kingston Energy Complex, we're building a 1,500 megawatt combined cycle plant there. And so it is underway and is expected to be complete next fiscal year, 27. We also have 500 megawatts going on at our New Caledonia plant north of Mississippi. Of 100 megawatts going into service at Shawnee. And so those are great things that are going on. We also have some areas that we're working on trying to grow our generation capacity quicker. We've identified about 1,000 megawatts that can be put in service near term. that would help us out meet the growing demand in the valley. So that work would include some cooling of our inlets. And what that does is that improves the thermodynamic cycle of the plant. And so it's able to produce more power. There's some transmission upgrades that we're looking at doing, as well as tuning of some of our gas plants to help the maximum output of those plants. And so all of those are some innovations that our employees have put together to find additional megawatts on the current system at a very low cost. So we'll be looking to get those in place over the next 2 to 3 years. We also are working hard with the board to get the 2026 Integrated Resource Plan issued this coming board meeting in a couple of weeks. And that Integrated Resource Plan clearly shows us the map or the strategy that we need to follow to meet the demand. The Integrated Resource Plan tells us that our growth rate is around 1.7 to 1.9% year over year. The growth rate is not linear across the Tennessee Valley territory. We're seeing population growth. For example, Northern Alabama is growing, Nashville is growing, Memphis is growing, Northern Mississippi is growing, Knoxville is growing, Chattanooga is growing, all the expected areas that you would see. And so we're continuing to work in those areas to ensure that we understand what we need to continue to grow out those areas. We're also committed in TVA to look for other ways to improve our performance and ability to put more capacity on the ground quicker. And so those efforts are underway. We're working on detailed plans and approaches to improve the capability of getting more generating plants on the ground and transmission upgrades completed more nimbly and efficiently. And so those plans are expected to be complete and in process this calendar year. And those would include similar things like standardization of engineering designs, simplification of engineering standards, better estimating, better schedule performance, reducing rework, for example, all things that are necessary to continue to help TVA be as competitive as possible in our rates around energy. Around new nuclear, a lot of action going on there. It's an exciting time. It's very busy. As you're aware, TVA is pro-nuclear. We advocate for nuclear. We have 7 nuclear reactors in our system. They provide stable, reliable energy. Those plants are being operated and maintained by the employees quite well. Very proud of what they're doing. We're in discussions with General Electric, Vernova, Hitachi, as well as Kairos Power, Intra1, which is a NuScale holding company. And we're continuing to work with them on negotiations and contracts to allow us to put those plants in the Tennessee Valley, all across the valley. And so those negotiations and discussions are going well. They're ongoing today as I speak. We're working with the Japanese also on those plants. And so I'm satisfied with the progress we're making in that area. And I'm happy with what that could bring to the valley with respect to economic development. Also, it'd help us, TVA, meet some of the demand for energy as we go forward. So those discussions are be going on for the next few weeks and months. And hopefully we'll have good things to report as we continue to wrap up those discussions. We're also working with other companies like Type 1, when I mentioned, that are looking to build a fusion plant in the valley. They're stationed right now at one of the old coal plants, Bull Run. So we're working with them and their technology and giving them the support necessary to keep that moving and going forward. So the principles that we're using as we work through those negotiations to make sure that we protect our competitiveness and our customers is we don't plan on funding any of these projects or first-of-a-kind nuclear plants. We're also looking to ensure that the risk associated with the plants would not cause problems or issues for TVA and its customers. We're also ensuring that the off-takers for the power are identified as part of the negotiation, such that our customers are not expected to pay any rates that aren't, within the realm that we're paying right now around competitiveness. And also, we are expected to operate these plants, so that ensures that we continue to watch over these plants to ensure that they're reliable and safe, and that they're good products, reliable products, and something that we can be proud of for the Tennessee Valley. We're also working with the state of Tennessee around nomination that the state of Tennessee was named as the Nuclear Lifestyle Innovation Campus host. And we'll continue to work with them and build out what role and responsibilities that TVA would play in that. And that sounds very, very fruitful as we work. So bottom line, what I'd like to leave you with is we're building out and investing in our power system, as I described, both new capacity or generation, as well as transmission system upgrades to meet the demand. We're not sitting idle, waiting on others to make things happen. We're going to make things happen and make sure that we're there and we continue to be competitive, and something that the Tennessee Valley is proud of. And that we're going to focus on being nimble, efficient, and aligned both inside and outside of TVA to make sure that our partners and our stakeholders are all aligned and in good step with one another, as well as TVA, to make sure that we continue to meet our mission of providing service, energy, environmental stewardship, and economic development to the region. So once again, thanks for having me. Appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you, Mike Skaggs and Heidi Smith. If you all want to pop back on the Zoom, we will start Q&A. A reminder to our attendees, if you have a question for the Vice President of Economic Development or the interim CEO of TVA, now is your chance to ask those questions directly to them. You can do that by using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you do not see a Q&A icon, click on More and you will be able to see it in there. So Heidi and Mike, as everybody starts to gather their questions, I'd like to kick things off with just a question about transmission and transmission planning. So the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council had the privilege of being on the IRP working group. And at that time, TVA was talking about the need for transmission planning, and that's not part of the IRP, but there was going to be a separate process for that. So can either of you just talk a little bit more about transmission planning? What are some of the next steps? And just share a little bit more details about how TVA approaches transmission planning.
So it's I'll field it, and then Heidi can fill in any points that she would like to offer. We analyze where the demand for power is coming across our territory, and then we based on the demand for energy, we'll do additional planning studies to understand what we are seeing currently, as well as what we're seeing that we expect to see in the future. And then we start looking for opportunities from an engineering perspective to understand what options we have to improve the reliability and resiliency of the transmission system, so that we can meet the current demand for power with a high level of reliability. And then we also start analyzing what upgrades need to be performed to ensure that we can carry that capacity that we expect to have happen in the future across our transmission system. And once that's completed, then they start developing optionalities for, how to do the design and where to implement the design at. And then they bounce that off of Heidi to ensure that it provides what she and her team are expecting from an economic development perspective in that same areas. Those ideas are integrated within the design analysis and approach. And then that gets completed from an engineering perspective, handed over to construction, and they put people on the ground in the field to make the changes necessary to carry out, what the design and the expected advancement in planning asks for. I hope that answered your question.
And Courtney, I might add, from an economic development role, we're working day in and day out with companies either looking to locate or expanding. And so we really lean in heavily with that company to understand how are they going to scale their power, what comes on, what do they need the first year through the fifth year. So we really are leaning in to try to get accurate information. The more accurate information we get helps our transmission team plan for the future. We also have a lot of historical information of where activity has been over the years. So what has been maybe hot regions or hot sites. And so we marry all that up to make sure that we're using the data, we're getting the right information so that when we're coming back into our transmission team, we're all really looking to solve the right issue.
Well, and Heidi, I'm glad that you touched on that because we are experiencing a bit of a business boom in the Tennessee Valley, fueled by lots of things, onshoring manufacturing, the nuclear renaissance, artificial intelligence. But, this boom is not unique to this moment in time. We've had other business booms in the Tennessee Valley, like auto manufacturing, for example. So, what are some of the things that TVA has done during the past booms that you can apply today or sort of share with us today?
Yeah, it's really getting those communities prepared for what growth they want. So at the end of the day, the community picks what industry they want to locate, who they're interested in, and if it fits for that community, that site, that region. So really leaning in to helping communities think through that. We do a lot of site preparation work. I mentioned that technical services group, that design team, where we can really help a community visualize what are they wanting, what fits, what doesn't fit, and then really working with our communities get alignment across the community with the elected officials, stakeholders, your local power companies, so that everybody is going after and promoting the same way so that there's alignment for the community. So we have a lot of pre-work that helps the community frame up how they can create those jobs and what makes sense for that community.
Great. We've got some questions in the Q&A box, so we'll turn to those now. How is TVA thinking about large loads or powered land facilities, mostly AI and data centers under FERC orders 205 and 206? Obviously, with new rate structures pending and not wanting LPCs and their customers to subsidize these facilities, is bring your own power on the table?
So the President of the United States put out the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, and we signed up to the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, and the Ratepayer Protection Pledge is a very simple approach to how you deal with this issue, and I have examples of how it's actually working. So we agreed to the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, and what that really, the intention of that is for data centers, and we're predominantly talking about data centers here because they take great loads. And so it's about protecting the customers from covering the cost of the data centers that are coming into the valley because they use so much power. And because we have to add capacity usually to cover for the data centers, and that additional capacity it has potential to drive their customers' rate up. And so what we put in place in agreement with alignment around the Ratepayer Protection Plan is we are studying and analyzing and process of taking to the board of TVA for approval rate changes associated with data centers. And essentially what it does is what I just described, is it puts in place, it ensures that the rate that the data center is paying is its fair share of value. And secondly, what else it does is it charges that data center or the individuals putting that data center into the territory. It asks them to cover the costs associated with any additional capacity for that plant, needed for that plant. And then that goes directly into TVA, which then would cover the cost for that capacity, which then those two things basically protect the customers from any rate increases due to data centers. So for example, we are working with SpaceX AI out in Memphis. And and that's part of the question, they brought their own combustion turbines, had over 40 combustion turbines to that site, which they are providing their own internal power as we are completing work necessary to provide energy to that facility. They need 1.1 gigawatts. And so we have provided 300 megawatts, I believe, to them so far. So they're using their own existing combustion turbines as well as battery packs that they have on semi-tractor trailers out there. And so those two products, the combustion turbine as well as the battery packs, they cover their energy needs as well as protect the grid from any demand that they cause. So it's a great cooperation and work together between XAI and TVA. And so we believe that level of cooperation and negotiations and the way we are dealing with them and the way they're dealing with us is a great example of what is expected from the ratepayer protection plan and our new proposed rate plan for data centers.
Okay. Next question. How does TVA prioritize different forms of energy generation, and would the TVA expect to change its portfolio in the next 5 to 10 years? Now, before you all answer that, I kind of want to frame this in the context of the IRP, because that is a very long process that the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council was a part of, along with other stakeholders. And I think you all are getting ready to present that to the board at your August meeting, correct? So that's Mike or Heidi, if you want to talk a little bit more about what the IRP does and that sort of framework, because that's a framework that TVA and a lot of other utilities use when they decide on different forms of energy generation.
Okay. So TVA is bound by least cost planning. And what that means in simplest terms is that we are to provide energy at the least cost price to our customers. And so what the IRP does is it takes that rule requirement and it analyzes multiple different thousands of different scenarios based on the economies of fuel, the economies of plant prices, supply chain, piece parts, for example. And essentially what it does is it provides options for what types of plants could be built and what parts of the different parts of the Tennessee Valley, such that it meets the needs of what the IRP is projecting for respect to demand. And it lays out optionalities around what type of plant should be picked based on least cost pricing. And so, right now, it is picking, that program is picking gas because of the fuel prices are low and natural gas. So we don't just pick up on what are the current day prices of natural gas. It also projects what is going to be the price of gas in 10 years and 20 years. And so, it picks out different types of fuel types. For example, it's picking gas a lot now, but it also picks solar in certain cases. And clearly it continues to pick the hydro plants that are in service. It continues to pick the nuclear plants that are in service. And so it is hard for me to predict based on what we know right now, and based on what the question is, it's going to continue to predict, similar products that we have in service in the Tennessee Valley, because those are highly reliable and most cost effective. But as the economy changes and as the fuel prices changes, it will change with the way the economy and the way fuel prices are shifting and the way the supply chain system is providing products. So I can't answer, I can tell you what the model says right now, which is what the IRP. And I've already told you that answer, but in 5 years or 10 years from now, it could completely reverse, and then we'll have to align with what it's projecting and picking. Heidi, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think and you mentioned this, Courtney, the whole notion or idea of an IRP, so that when companies are looking at regions, that sets up our foundation for how we're going to operate. And that gives comfort to companies knowing that we are looking ahead and we're looking towards the future and we're positioning our region to be as competitive as possible. So it's a good message for companies that are considering making investments.
Okay, let's see. We've got lots of other questions here. Um, okay, this is a good one. So many people will hear AI or data centers and immediately think either unlimited opportunity or significant risk. So, from TVA's perspective, what are the most misunderstood benefits and most misunderstood risks? And how can TVA, industry, and organizations like TABC work together to improve public understanding?
So I'll start and I'll let Heidi clean up anything that I did wrong. So let's start off with the negatives. I think one of the misunderstandings of data center is the water usage. So uh, the original data centers, some of them did have open water systems, or so the current ones now, the ones that are being put in service now, have closed loop water systems, which essentially means it's just recycling the water over and over again. So once the initial water system is filled, it might need minimal makeup on a monthly basis, but chemicals are added into the water cooling system, but it's closed loop, so the use of water is extremely low. So I don't believe that to be a concern. Uh, I think there was some noise issues associated with data centers originally. That's been solved by the way the structures are being built. So the noise is actually encapsulated within the buildings, for example. They don't make a loud noise. They don't make a static noise. They make a beeping noise mainly. There is some static noise, but none of the new data centers actually no perceptible noise on the outside of the buildings. I think the positives are they do bring a significant, I mean, they're extremely expensive to be built, and the initial installation and construction work as well as design work, that's an economic boom to that area, and Heidi can expand on that here in a little bit. Secondly, the systems do attract other businesses to that area. Uh, so that is another positive. And thirdly, I believe that uh, the artificial intelligence that is underway right now, that revolution or evolution of artificial intelligence, I think it's going to help us continue to bring higher levels of security to the United States, which I do believe we need to do. So I see that as a benefit. And so Heidi, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, and I would say, Courtney, it's like any industry that comes to look at a community or a state. I think the community or the state need to understand the pros and cons of that industry, and is that a fit? Is that a fit for that local community? Just like any other industry, what they do, how do they pay their workers? What kind of work environment it is. So I think it's just really understanding the industry better. What does it bring with it? I might mention some of the positive things that do come from data centers, but really understanding what comes from it. Is it a good fit, and is it something that's going to continue to grow your region and your economy? So I think all of those from any industry, communities should be questioning that on all fronts every time.
All right, shifting gears, Mike, you had mentioned at the Now conference yesterday this potential Japanese trade deal where Japan may invest up to 40 billion in small nuclear reactors, including at TVA's proposed Clinch River site. Can you talk just a little bit more and expand about just a little bit more on those comments that you offered about this deal at the Now conference for our attendees today?
Yeah. So specific to Clinch River, right?
Yes, or whatever else you would like on this topic. The floor is yours.
Okay. Uh, So General Electric, Vernova, and Hitachi, which is a consortium or partnership of those different companies, they represent the design of a boiling water reactor, advanced reactor that produces 330 megawatts of energy. And their goal or aspirations are to build multiple of those units at the Clinch Riverside. As probably most are aware, TVA is close to gaining a construction permit to be able to build those type of units at the Clinch Riverside. The number of units is still under discussion, but it's more than one. I'll leave it like that. So what that entails is an understanding of everybody's roles and responsibilities around this project. And so that is part of the negotiation and part of the work that still is continuing. These energy contracts are very large and very complex. And if not the biggest type of energy contract that has ever been done, they border on, or they're very close to being the biggest. So ensuring that we get all this correct and make sure that we understand who's going to perform what functions is critical. And so that's the part of the work that's going on. Clearly, GE is responsible, as well as Vernova and Hitachi is responsible for the design work as well as the components. So that's taken up. But just understanding the oversight roles and the classical roles that are involved in building a nuclear power plant, for example, like quality assurance, licensing, the leadership, how we're going to find leadership to adequately lead this project going forward, as well as the transitional phases from design through construction, through testing, through the commissioning. All that's got to be well planned out and well thought out. And as well as going over the lessons learned of the industry, the nuclear industry in the past, and ensure that those lessons learned are built in to the approach, the work that would be performed at Clinch River to ensure that the costs are kept down as low as possible and that the schedule is performed as quickly as it can be done, but completed safely, such that at the end of the day, the plant is the most reliable. On top of that also is there'll be transmission work that will be needed to be complete to ensure that the plant is tied in. And then the other things that I talked about earlier around the four principles is understanding who's going to be the market off-taker, and for example, where that data center would be located such that it's close enough to the plant to ensure the intense high reliability that it needs, as well as locating it close enough to reduce the costs associated with increasing the transmission system to attach it to the grid. So that's some of the work that's going on. TVA is by our involvement, because we own the land, by our involvement because we'll be the operator of the plant, we're very engaged in ensuring that the oversight for the plant is done appropriately and correctly, that the oversight of engineering products is done correctly. And that's all to ensure that the plant that we would end up operating is safe and reliable, and that we'll be responsible for the end product, as well as negotiating with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, fulfilling their duties to ensure that it's safe and operated correctly. So those are just some of the aspects. Clearly we would have to find additional operators to operate the plant. They would have to be trained and qualified on that design. And so those are just some of the aspects that have to be dealt with, as we continue to negotiate our way through to a successful contract.
Okay, great. And Mike and Heidi, we do have another question about the Bring Your Own Power framework. So perhaps we should just repeat the answer to your question. This one is framed more around, with all this additional economic development and the speed at which these projects are moving, is TVA considering a Bring Your Own Power framework? And if not, what are the barriers and what would need to change to make that possible? So I know that you all have already answered this, but perhaps the answer bears repeating.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Mike, to kind of start us off. I think it's really for economic development. So traditional economic development projects, the advanced manufacturing, kind of the industry sector that I laid out on one of my slides. Oftentimes, it's really about understanding how they're going to scale the power. Occasionally, a conversation will come up about, can we bring on-site generation? But usually, as we navigate and communicate within TVA and also with that end use company, a lot of times they find their own solutions, and it's not as prevalent as it is with the data center industry. So that industry sector is more advanced in bringing that on-site generation. The traditional manufacturing, it will come up, but we haven't had a real opportunity to explore that in full capacity. But the data center industry, it is.
All right. And a reminder to everyone, if you would like to ask a question, please use that Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We're gonna keep on that thread of AI and data centers because it is a hot topic. Are you all seeing any system issues with the data centers you currently have?
So we've seen some variability or fluctuating of loads on some of the initial data centers, but I would tell you that the transmission engineers and the planning group in transmission has done a very nice job of, uh, of the work that they're required to do before we allow the data center to connect to the grid. So I think the initial problems that we saw and fluctuations, that's been uh, uh, it's been dealt with very well. I hate to put a percent to it, but I would say that, we're not seeing any significant issues. So I would say that the work that the transmission engineers have done so far and they continue to do has done a good job to ensure that the grid is stable and reliable. And I expect them to continue to do that service because that's one of their primary objectives is to ensure that our grid is strong, reliable, and resilient, and that's what that means to me. So uh, we had some initial issues, but I would say that those have been essentially been resolved, and that our approach to grid or transmission system upgrades continues to ensure that our standards, which include fluctuations and load stability, are incorporated in that, and they do a nice job of ensuring that that gets done.
Great. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions in our Q&A box, so we are going to close it out. Mike Skaggs, Interim President and CEO, Heidi Smith, Vice President of Economic Development. Thank you all for joining us today on our TAEBC Lunch and Learn Zoom. To all of our attendees, thank you for joining us today. If you are not a member of the Tennessee Advanced Energy Business Council, we'd love to have you on our team. So you can go to tnadvancedenergy.com, find out more about us. Our next event is November. It's Opportunities in Energy. We'll send you all a link to that. Early bird registration is now open, and we hope to see you there. So thank you all again and have a good day.